This is Psych Overflow, coming to you from the University of Southern California's Psychology Department.
We are your go-to podcast for all things psychology.
Welcome, and let's dive in.
Okay, welcome to the second summer episode of Psych Overflow. For those of you that don't know, I'm Armin. I'm a rising second year in the BCS department, and I'm joined here with Phil and Elayne. Do you guys want to introduce yourselves?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Elayne. I use she, her pronouns. I am a rising third year in the clinical area, working with Dr. Stan Huey and Dr. Jessica Borelli.
Hi guys, I'm Phil Newsome. I'm a rising second year in the clinical science program at USC, and I am working with Dr. Darby Saxby.
Great, yeah. So, hopefully this is like everyone who's listening to this, listen to the first episode. But so the previous episode, Natalie and I talked about our summers as BCS students, and I'm pretty divorced from what happens in the clinical side of the program, but it is like one of the larger programs at I guess any psych department. So I thought it'd be a good idea to get Elayne and Phil on here so they could just kind of talk about what summer looks like as a clinical student. You guys can get into the details. I'm not sure if it involves more, I guess, in the field kind of stuff now that you have more time. I know that's kind of a part of what you do in clinical. Maybe we can just start with what you guys have just generally been up to in the summer and how your summers kind of just have evolved. And, if you're, again, if you guys find yourselves doing more kind of research, maybe more clinical specific things, or just kind of a mixture of the two. I'm curious to hear about that.
Yeah. So this is my second summer, and it feels very different from the first time around. I think because I've been trying to decentralize work a little bit in my life. But this summer has been, I would say, a pretty even balance between clinical work and research. So I've continued to see my therapy clients over the summer. I know a lot of my cohort mates are doing a little bit of makeup assessment hours. So oftentimes we don't really have protected time to do clinical assessments, and we do a lot of that during the summer. I've also been doing some preliminary work, just laying down the foundation for my dissertation. I feel like that's kind of the bulk of what I've been doing. And I've been doing some clinical work through a research study that's happening in our department, which has been really interesting. So leading group therapy. The study kind of broadly is comparing ACT and CBT. So it's been really cool to be able to try being a therapist and working in kind of a different type of setting and in groups.
Yeah, great. And then, so what is makeup assessment for me and others, I guess?
Yeah. So when I say makeup assessment, I just mean during the school year, we're mostly seeing therapy clients, and some of our clinical training is also going towards neuropsychological assessments, right? So cognitive functioning, for example, ADHD, learning disorders, things like that, and essentially testing for where folks fall on their performance. So that's part of our training. There's, I would say, less protected time to do that kind of work through our coursework. So a lot of folks do it over the summer.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks.
So this was my first summer in the program, and I would say my time has been probably more research than clinical this summer. So it's probably varies program to program. But I know for our program over the first summer, in terms of the clinical, you spend a lot of your time just doing just assessments. So we kind of have some almost like a structured kind of supervision, or honestly a class, where we're kind of just walking through the steps to completing either one or two assessments over the summer. So I've been working on that clinically, but then I would say probably 70% of my time, or at least my school time, academic time, has been working on our research. At the end of our first year, we have to propose what our master's is going to be. So I think right now I'm kind of just getting everything set up to start those analyses and get that kind of underway so I can have a master's project.
Yeah. No, I'm in the same boat as you with that. I'm
Yeah.
struggling now to to figure out. I think I figured out where I want to take it, but
Mm.
still need to do all the steps, and I haven't figured out who my committee is going to be really. So
Oh,
kind of, a little nervous about that, but
yeah.
yeah, okay, great. So yeah, I've a couple questions, I guess, just related to that for both of you. But I guess before we get into that, so something that, Nat and I discussed was how you kind of approach summer, you don't have courses. I mean, maybe I presume most people don't have courses. Maybe most people aren't TAing, some people aren't fellowships. Um, so, just naturally you have a lot more time to focus on research, and other academic things. So I'm curious, did you guys kind of come into summer with like a kind of list of goals that you had? You kind of like at the beginning of August, maybe you thought to yourself, okay, I have like 3 solid months. I can get some work done, maybe shoot for the stars. I don't know. Something I did, and I mentioned this in the previous podcast, was I kind of mistakenly set my goals a little too high, I think, at the beginning of summer, which it's a learning process. This is my first, I guess, summer as a PhD student, so I thought I could do a lot more with this amount of time than I really have been able to do. But yeah, I was curious, I guess, to hear about your guys' kind of perspective. Did you set goals for yourselves, and did you kind of put like maybe like a 70-30 split on your goals as well? 70% research, maybe 30% clinical, or do you guys kind of approach summer with the same mentality of like this is a good chunk of time to do research?
Yeah, I think I definitely had similar to you. I think I went into summer thinking this was going to be like incredibly productive summer, and I think it has been in some ways. But I didn't realize kind of how much I needed to decompress from the first year, which is kind of like just stressful for a lot of different reasons. So I think I ended up taking more time than I probably assumed I was going to take before the summer started, just to like kind of chill and kind of start, my assessments and make sure that was like hitting the ground running and all that stuff. But yeah, research wise, yeah, I think it took kind of like you, it took me a little more time to get things at least completed. But that being said, yeah, I took some time off and nothing bad happened. Like everything is okay. Research is going fine. So yeah, I guess it was good to kind of get that feedback, like, oh, I can take a week or two off and I won't get thrown out the program. So I guess I learned
Yeah.
that.
No, totally. And I don't this is because this is like an audio thing. Elayne and I were both just nodding in agreement the whole time Phil was saying that, because yeah, no, you do bring up a very valid point. Like, although summer is, time to get ahead because it's kind of unadulterated time, it is time to also relax, and that is something that I also um did for myself, was just kind of try to like set time aside for myself too, because the school year can be very stressful, and it is good to take time for yourself. And as you said, the world doesn't end when you take time off, so that's great. Thank you.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that's why I'm trying to decentralize work a little bit this summer, because last summer I think I really burned myself out and then went into my second year, which is one of our harder years, just already feeling a little burnt out. So I think and nothing's really changed. I'm still having a productive summer, but I'm just being more intentional about the time that I'm not spending on work, right? And part of that too is I've been doing a professional development kind of check-in hour with one of my cohort mates where we just take a step back and we're like, okay, what's going on? Where are we kind of headed? What questions do we not have time to ask ourselves when we're really just on autopilot pushing forward on our work? So that's actually been really helpful this summer to just think about what's going on in our lives and in our careers and what we actually want with our degree. So that's been, I think, a really good use of my time this summer. In terms of goals, my main goal was just to submit my master's thesis for publication, and I just got that in this week. So I'm really happy about being done with that.
Congrats.
Thank you. Yeah, it feels like a long road, but then once it's done, it's done. So feeling good about that. And then, I wanted to find a community partner for my dissertation because I'm really invested in doing participatory research, and the community partner is such an important piece of that. So locking that down was a goal of mine. And then I forgot to mention, I'm doing an RA-ship this summer, actually with a professor in social work, which stemmed from a class that I took in social work. So I think it's a reminder that there are classes outside of psych and partnerships and collaborations that we can make. And he's been kind enough to set aside some funding for me to do some preliminary interviews for my dissertation, just to kind of inform the direction I'm moving into. So I think those are kind of my broad arms that I'm trying to make progress in. And other than that, just doing fun things this summer is a really, really important goal of mine. So I'm doing a woodworking class this weekend.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Yeah, no, this kind of, I guess, kind of brings up another point too. Do you guys find yourselves needing to like schedule time to have fun, or because I, at least for myself, I feel like I was never somebody who really like put things in a calendar prior to starting the PhD, but I think now there's just so much happening that if something's not in my calendar, I either won't get to it or I won't think about it. And something I've started doing for myself is kind of just put in my calendar, like, okay, this is the time that I want to go to the park. Like, I want to go do something, or, or just like scheduling like activities and things like that. Because I know that if I don't do that for myself, it's very easy to, get sucked into like whatever problem I'm working on at the moment. So, I'm wondering if is this just a me thing? Are you guys doing this yourselves?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I've always been using calendars like for a while probably, but definitely it's become the stakes are a little higher because you're right. At least what I felt, one thing of the difference between like maybe doing the PhD and like my undergrad degree or whatever is like there's really never a moment where there's nothing to do work-wise, like at this stage. Like there's always something I could be doing, and I know that. So it is like you have to be so intentional about being like, I'm not gonna look at anything for these many hours or for this day or whatever, because there's always something to do. Like I always have things written down that need to be checked off. So yeah, I just think you're right. You have to be super careful with like your time during the weekend, that you don't like spend the whole weekend, working, and just making sure that you're setting some time aside to yeah, do other stuff because you'll get burned out quick.
Yeah, I would say very similarly. I know that even when I put things into my calendar, they're like the first thing to go. So even more so, it's important to put things in my calendar and treat my personal time with as much value and weight as I would with a class or with, seeing a client or something like that. So definitely trying to carve out more time and also be more intentional with my screen time. I think that's been something that I've been working on this summer. So I'm not, I turn my phone off first thing in the morning and just have couple hours first thing without any of that. And it creates so much more spaciousness for me to move about my day instead of just jumping straight into work first thing in the morning and then catching a breath in the middle of the day. So I think that's really important. And, just like Phil said, there's always stuff going on. So something that helps me is breaking things down into really small bite-sized things. And as long as I check off those bite-sized things, nothing else exists. That's all I have to worry about in for that day, and I can just give myself a break from worrying about the stuff for the next day or the next week.
Yeah, no, it's all about the small wins. I like to make to-do lists for myself because it feels like, you kind of like when you make the to-do list, it feels productive. It feels like you're taking control of your day. And maybe I take the bite-sized things a little too literally, because my girlfriend always makes fun of me because like in my to-do list, I'll have like wake up or like just, I'll like have come home, shower, and then like, work or something like that, just to like get that nice, like, okay, I did this, I can check this off. And also, yeah, you brought up screen time, and I think we could have like a whole conversation about that as well, because that is something that is, I guess, probably like a newer thing too, especially with like social media and how sophisticated, these algorithms are getting, and how good they are at like carving out like a niche for you to stay on their platforms. And I've been finding that, true with myself as well, that I can really get sucked into this like the dark playground very quickly, very easily. And it does kind of like affect the rest of my day, like if I spend a lot of time on the screen, then I don't know, I get kind of depressed, a little bit. And it kind of bleeds into like other parts of my life. So I think being very,
Yeah.
like thoughtful and just kind of like taking the time to set it aside and just read or do something, touch grass is an important thing to kind of remind yourself about too.
The other thing I was gonna add to the scheduling and the list making just reminded me of it, Armin, about like writing every single thing down. So one thing that I've been doing is I'll set like a countdown timer for things, and like when the timer goes off, I have to stop and go to the next thing. And that also kind of like manages like my screen time and social media use as well. Because we're like, I don't have that long to do this thing, or I have to go to the next thing. So I think it also helps me like just like do things, and it can be things that are fun too. It's like, oh, like I'm gonna go out for an hour. I'm gonna go to the coffee shop for an hour or so, and I don't know, do something like very low cognitive
Mhm.
work or whatever. I'm gonna do that for 2 hours, and I'll literally set my 2 hour timer, and then I'm like, okay, on like now I go home and I need to cook dinner, and I think that kind of like helped me. And it might be a little exact, but at least like I'm not, because it's so easy to like, especially if I'm working on something like research. Like I'll say I'm gonna work on this for like an hour or two, and then it'll be like midnight. Like it'll be like I feel like that's happened so many times where like I look up and I'm like, oh, it's dark outside now. That's crazy. So like just set, like literally like having the timer go off. I'm like, okay, that's it, and we'll go to the next thing.
Yeah, no, totally. I think that's a good point too, because like a lot of those research insights, at least, for me specifically, and I know Natalie mentioned this too, they kind of occur as like when you're not in that sort of just zone of like, okay, I'm working. Sometimes when you step away from the problem, that's when you kind of start to put things together and really figure things out. So even from a productivity research perspective, it's good to step away as well. Cool. Thank you. Thanks for sharing. Just to get back on the theme of summer. So yeah, we talked about, how you guys might have, I guess, more clinical things to do. It sounds like, at least for both of you, maybe it's fair to say it's been like a bit of a 70-30 split, 70% research, 30%, other activities, which I think makes sense. You guys are PhD students at the end of the day. You're here to do research, I think, mainly. But yeah, so I guess, how are you guys approaching the upcoming semester as well? For me, I get a little bit of anxiety thinking about it. But are there things that you've done in the summer, like maybe things that you've learned, I guess, through this summer and just kind of being away from school, being away from courses, and kind of things that you've developed through this summer that you kind of want to take with you into the next academic cycle?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is maintaining relationships with people that are not PhD students. I think has been my number one thing that I'm taking out of the summer, and having those spaces for fun and connecting with people beyond just being a scientist and a researcher. So I've been going to like a drawing group, so I'm going to keep doing that during the semester, and I want to connect with my cohort mates in ways that aren't always about work all the time. And then in terms of practices, again, I think like the screen time thing will make a huge difference during the semester, because just like you, I get depressed when I am on my phone all day. And I know that it's even worse during the semester because I'm also stressed and not sleeping that well. So I think those are the biggest things that I want to do. And this is my last semester of classes that are required. So I'm kind of just going to like head down, finish that up. We're applying to externships as well this semester. So that's going to shift things around in the future. So, all of that being said, it's going to be a somewhat lighter year. So, I really want to make the most of this year and make progress and continue to keep that momentum going with the different projects I'm involved in.
Yeah, for me, I think it's more so just gonna be splitting my time in probably more ways in the second semester. So just trying to like kind of like in this last month that we have, make sure like research wise, like everything is kind of organized and ready to go. So I'm not doing a lot of like cleaning or anything like that. Like when it comes time to like start doing stuff in the fall, just try to make stuff like easier, like having my assessment kind of done and out the way for the summer so that doesn't bleed into the fall, things like that. Because I feel like between courses, research, TAing, the clinical work, things are going to probably get a little hectic at some point. So just trying to make sure I can help myself out now and yeah, as best as I can to prepare for, I guess the time commitment that's coming.
Yeah, no, totally. I think you guys kind of hit both of the nails on the head, like
Mhm.
the summertime is it is a good time to kind of set yourself up well for the semester. Especially because yeah, you're right. I mean, something I was unprepared for was, I guess, the sheer time commitment that courses would have and how much time that would take away from me for research. Um, and in some cases, courses can be beneficial. Like I guess with Elayne, and I had a course in the first semester as well where I was able to kind of like use it towards research. But for like a lot of courses, that might not be the case, and I think it is good to kind of just be mindful of the fact that you probably won't have as much time as you do during the semester, and however you can set yourself up for that is good. So I've been trying to do that for myself as well. And then also, yeah, to your point, Elayne, I think it's true that being able to step back from everything this summer, especially this being kind of like not my first summer, but like my first summer as a graduate student, has allowed me to think like, hey, like my mental health probably wasn't as good as it could have been, during that first year. And, hey, this summer allowed me to kind of find ways that, just outlets for myself, creative outlets, social outlets, whatever that can help me throughout the school year. So, yeah, I think, it's sounds like it's just kind of a continuous learning process for all of us. But yeah, so I guess before we call it, any words of wisdom about your summer experience, and if you could tell yourself at the beginning of the summer something, or whoever, is there anything you'd like to share?
Yeah, I would say that, obviously if you're in a PhD program, you're going to be working hard and you're going to be doing things, but you're only this young once. Things should still be doing things over the summer that are aligned with, what you want to do outside of academia. You have your whole life to be productive, and yeah, like academia is not going anywhere. So, don't let the time pass, and then you have to look back and think, damn, like I should have done some more things for myself during those years. Um, Try to do it, try to make yourself do some stuff in the moment.
Yeah, I think similarly, I've been thinking about every yes I say is a no to something else. And the flip side, every no I say is a yes to something else, right? So if I choose to say no to an opportunity to get involved in some paper that I'm not actually that excited about, that opens up more time for me to work on projects that feel very aligned with my research mission, or give me more time to be outside and touch grass, right? And breathe fresh air and do fun things. So just remembering to be intentional about that time and not just saying yes to every single thing, which I think is our gut instinct at the beginning because we're trying to do a good job and be a good PhD student and make our mentors and advisors happy and feel competitive in some senses as well, and that imposter syndrome. So, um, like Phil is saying, we start setting those habits now. And if you sacrifice yourself every single time now, that is the habit in the long run that you're setting as well. So, yeah, I think just remembering that at the end of the day, you have to live with the decisions you're making now, and it's your degree. So try to actually make it your degree, I think would be my takeaway.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you both for sharing. Something else I guess I'll say as my final word too is that Phil, you mentioned that, we are like young, we're students. It is a good time to take advantage of the summer. And, even though like some of us are or many of us are probably still getting paid to do research over the summer. It is our job. There is like some like leniency, I guess, afforded to PhD students specifically over the summer. And that's something that I think I took for granted. Specifically, I have a lot of friends in tech, and they don't get summers in tech. So it's been kind of like one of those things where I do realize how fortunate I am as a student too, where I have this opportunity to really enjoy a summer as well and kind of use it for myself, because many of my friends are still kind of just working 9 to 5s throughout the summer. Well, thank you both for joining me, and yeah, thank you. It was a pleasure.
Awesome. Thanks
Yeah.
for having me.
Yeah, thanks.
This is Psych Overflow signing off. Thank you for listening.
Be sure to subscribe to our podcast for future episodes, and don't hesitate to reach out to us with your feedback, questions, or topic suggestions.
See you next time.